In 1992 in Donhai, young Stella, her father Tom, and her mother Duangfen join their neighbors on the streets, who are celebrating a traditional ritual. Legend says that once upon a time there was a ring that could bring prosperity and abundance, but those who stole it were overtaken by greed. Those men fought for the ring and it broke into pieces. A demoness then appeared and killed those men before putting a famine curse on the village. Now the locals perform this ritual every year, hoping one day the demoness will forgive them and bring abundance again. The group sets up a bunch of meat dolls at the forest's edge and begins praying. When they hear roaring, they look down out of respect. Once the ritual is done, everyone goes home but Stella notices her uncle Jamboon staying near the forest. That night Stella wakes up when she hears a noise and sees Tom sneaking out of the house. He enters the forest with his gun out and notices the pieces of meat dolls hanging on the trees. Eventually he encounters the demoness devouring the meat and she growls at him before disappearing. A terrified Tom hears another noise and slowly turns around, only to find Stella. After Tom confirms he came looking for the demoness and the ring, they hear another creepy noise so they start moving toward a bright light, but they freeze when they hear more roaring. Noticing a shack nearby, Tom orders Stella to hide there and gives her a radio, telling her to call and say certain code if something happens to him. Then Tom approaches the light alone and finds the mythical ring floating in the air. He activates his mysterious bracelet and the ring starts coming down, but at the moment the demoness appears. The bracelet starts failing and the ring goes up again, glowing so much brighter that it scares the demoness off. Suddenly the ring shoots a huge beam of light that reaches the sky, which Jamboon sees from his house. Stella also sees the light and runs out to find Tom, but he's disappeared. She stares at the floating ring as the light disappears too and something falls from a tree nearby. When Stella checks on it, she's horrified to find a dead body. More human pieces begin to fall around her, so she rushes to hide in the shack and calls for help. When a body falls through the shack's roof, a terrified Stella rushes out and begins running again, dodging the bodies without noticing they're falling from a mysterious light in the sky. When she leaves the forest she finds a car waiting. In 2023 in Bangkok, a recently divorced Stella is in charge of a museum space exhibition. However, after a mistake that was actually her boss's fault, she gets fired. That night Stella tells her daughter Valen that they aren't going home because it was a work benefit, so she's looking for a place to spend the night. At that moment she receives a call from her Donhai informing her that her mother is sick, so Stella agrees to visit. The plane tickets are paid by her cousin Ithi, who also picks them up at the airport. As they come closer to the village, Stella remembers the morning after the incident. Duangfen and Jamboon tried to tell her that Tom abandoned them, but Stella insisted she saw bodies falling and that her dad may have been taken. Jamboon scolded her and said she dreamed everything. In the present, Stella visits Duangfen at the hospital. The old lady mentions Tom's code, saying it's time for Stella to find her dad. However, Stella thinks it's the fever talk. Afterwards Stella goes to her old house and discovers Jamboon is so desperate to buy it that he offers much more money than it's actually worth. Stella refuses and decides to live here for now to stay close to her sick mother. She also notices that Jamboon's son Kong looks exactly like the last time she saw him. He even looks younger than her even though he's older. Later Stella teaches Valen that they must always take care of themselves, which makes her remember how the kids in her village used to mock her for being half white. When the kids insulted her mother, little Stella would fight them. The kids ran away when they noticed Kong watching them, confirming he looked the same back then. Every day Stella tried saying the code on the radio, but she never got an answer. In the present, Stella tries the code on the radio again to no avail. In the middle of the night a voice on the radio wakes Stella up. It's Tom, who thinks he's talking to Duangfen and says that if she has the bracelet, she must take it to certain coordinates. Stella starts writing everything down while trying to talk to him, but it turns out to be a recording that soon ends. The next morning Stella asks her mother about this. Duangfen explains she's been in contact with Tom since Stella left for college, but only once a year. Tom said that 1 year on Earth is equivalent to 1 minute in the spacetime where he is. He wanted Duangfen to collect the ring using the bracelet and activate something called Tekli Genesis in the basement of an abandoned military facility. Then she would have to enter the coordinates to make him come back. This confirms Stella's incident was real and she promises to rescue her father. Afterwards Stella and Ithi ask Kong to steal Jumbo's bracelet, which matches Tom's. At first Kong refuses because he doesn't want to get in trouble, so Stella starts pointing out all the mysteries in the village. Only Jumbo is allowed to enter the forest, and he hasn't aged either. Desperate for answers, Kong agrees to help. That night Kong waits until Jumbo is deeply asleep and takes the bracelet plus the gun next to it. Then he, Ithi, and Stella enter the forest, unaware that various circles of light have appeared in the area. While the trio explores the woods, Stella gets a call from Valen who is waiting in the car. She thinks she saw someone nearby, but Stella says it was just a shadow. However, a woman can be seen waiting and Valen tries to hide. Soon the group finds the floating ring, glowing as usual. Stella puts on the bracelet and the ring immediately transforms into a sphere before it starts to go down. At that moment the woman Valen saw appears behind them and begins glowing too as it shows her demonic form. When the sphere lands on Stella's hand it expels a big shockwave that makes the creature disappear. Then the trio tries to run away, only to find the demoness in her full monster form. Kong immediately shoots her, triggering a flashback of a school shooting and his body falling through the sky. This makes him collapse, so the others put the gun away and help him get in the car. The demoness tries coming after them, but the wound makes her slow. As the group drives away, they notice Jumbo arriving in his own car. Later at the abandoned military base, the group breaks the door open and rushes to the basement, not noticing the weird energy at the door. When Kong turns on the power, they discover a huge machine. Stella says the code into the radio before putting the bracelet in the control board, which activates a small hologram that connects them to Tom. He's shocked to hear it's been 30 years for them and apologizes for disappearing. Tom explains he's a CIA agent on a mission to return a device from the Teklee Genesis project. The night of the incident, the device malfunctioned and sent him to an abandoned space station created by an advanced alien civilization. For him it's only been 30 minutes, however the station doesn't have much oxygen or fuel left. He wants Stella to call the code for help, but she explains nobody has answered since the incident. She wants to go find him using the device, however he says it isn't easy. The hologram suddenly transforms as Tom explains Teklee Genesis is a project that the American military started after finding some alien technology. They tested it on military facilities all over the world and their goal was to find a way to travel faster than light. The alien tech was divided and rebuilt into the bracelet and the sphere, which control the warping process. Stella puts on the bracelet and sends the sphere to join the hologram as Tom explains the sphere is made of 5 rings. They control gravity, communication, time, galactic latitude and longitude. This means the bracelet can be used to time travel anywhere in the universe. Unfortunately, the gravity and time rings were broken and lost during the trip. They need to find those rings and fix the device if they want to bring Tom back. The gravity ring is in Banqiang 5,000 years before Christ, while the parts of the time ring are 200 years in the future. They can get there because even if the sphere is broken, it'll always follow its missing parts, but they mustn't deviate from those destinations until the device is fixed. The warping process will take everything in a 5-meter radius, meaning they must always find an empty area to travel. The basement is big enough so the group stands under the sphere, which Stella activates using the bracelet. The sphere glows and in just 1 second they've traveled to the past. The group notices the parts of the ring floating above a bunch of tents before they see a few people approaching. At first they think it's cavemen, but a closer look reveals they're zombies. The group immediately starts running toward the tents yelling for help, only to crash against a force field caused by the ring. It isn't until Stella passes through with the sphere that it opens for the others, and the zombies are left outside. The natives treat the group as deities and immediately start worshipping them. Noticing the state of the Banqiang tribe, Ithi theorizes that since they're caught inside the force field, they have almost no food left. Stella doesn't want to take the ring because it'll remove these people's protection against the zombies, but Ithi points out they already know this tribe goes extinct and they're not supposed to change history. While Valen shares her soda with a boy named Morden, Ithi impresses the natives with his phone. Suddenly Kong grabs the bracelet and the sphere to activate the floating ring. After lots of bright lights and sparks, the force field disappears and the ring becomes part of the sphere again. Kang is still controlling the sphere and he won't be able to hold it for long, so they need to leave quickly. At that moment the zombies attack and a fight ensues with both sides losing people by the second. Stella looks for her daughter and when she's about to reach her, a zombie tackles her to the ground. Thankfully Morden's mother kills the zombie by stabbing it in the head. More zombies are coming and the bitten humans are transforming, so Ithi opens fire. The noise causes Kong to freeze so Ithi has to drag him away to find an open area. Stella and Valen try to follow them and they get attacked by a zombie again, but thankfully the natives come to their rescue. Kong activates the warping and Ithi has to keep the locals at bay with his gun. A desperate Stella runs to join them and doesn't notice until the last second that she grabbed Morden instead of Valen. The group returns to the present with the wrong child and Stella immediately wants to go back, but the guys have to stop her. While Morden starts crying, Stella calls Tom for help, however he agrees that she must finish the sphere before going back. In the past, Morden's mother and Valen find a spot to hide from the zombies. When the group gets ready to travel again, Jamboon shows up and threatens to shoot them if they don't give him the bracelet. He reveals that while the team was in the past, 10 years passed in the present. To prove it, they go outside and find a giant skeleton in the village. Jamboon explains that without the ring's protection, the monster killed all the locals including Duangfen. Stella still refuses to give him the bracelet and promises to fix this after rescuing her family. Before Jamboon can shoot, Kong jumps on him and they start fighting for the gun. When Stella activates the sphere, Jamboon punches Kong down and runs to put his hand to fight for control of the warping. At that moment Ithi tackles Jamboon and Kong catches him so they start fighting over the gun again. In the struggle, the weapon is accidentally shot and someone starts bleeding. The sphere glows and Stella, Morden, and Ithi appear in New Udon in 2224. A bunch of armed teenagers surround them and quickly knock them out. When Stella wakes up, she and Ithi are handcuffed to a bench and they can hear growling coming from the next room. The teens swear Morden is fine and ask Stella to teach them how to use the Teklee Genesis. As Stella notices she's missing the bracelet and the sphere, the teens reveal they've made a copy prototype, which they've used to create a force field around their city that has frozen some government missiles in the sky. It turns out that 200 years ago, the city of Udanthani was attacked by a giant monster. It destroyed most of Thailand, but thankfully the country got help from foreign governments and together they brought down the monster. The city was rebuilt under a new name and at first the foreigners helped, but soon they sided with the industrialists and usurped all the resources, leaving Udan in poverty. These teenagers became the resistance and one day they watched the black hole appear in the sky, destroying the whole city again with a big explosion. That hole also dropped the part of the ring. The government only saved the rich people and now the poor survivors are living with monsters of all sizes. When the resistance found the basement with the Teklee Genesis, they reverse-engineered the machine but no matter how hard they tried they couldn't make it work. They insist they need to learn how to use it, but Stella refuses to cooperate with these things. In the present, Kong realizes the gun has wounded Jamboon, who wants to make a confession before dying. In 1964 people believed that American soldiers were torturing Thai prisoners to get information, but actually they were kidnapping people to use them in their time-traveling experiments. Jamboon was captured together with Lawan, who could speak English and learned to control the machine by hearing the Americans talk. When it was their turn to enter the machine, Jamboon pretended to have a seizure, so while everyone was distracted, Lawan took the bracelet and controlled the sphere. She activated the warp, causing her, Jamboon, and a bunch of soldiers to be transported to the Ice Age. A soldier managed to shoot her, so Jamboon took the gun from him and shot him back before grabbing another soldier hostage. Then Lawana activated the warping again and they were transported to the Bon Xiang tribe. Jamboon used the confusion to quickly shoot all the soldiers, meaning they were the ones to bring the zombie virus and the ring piece to the past. The next time Lawana activated the sphere, she jumped with Jamboon to the future and a soldier followed them. This man detonated a grenade that caused the explosion the teenagers saw. Their final jump was to Danhai in 1969 and Jamboon used the remaining rings to heal Lawana. However, her body didn't take the power well and she transformed until she became the demoness. She couldn't leave the forest, so she told Jamboon to leave alone and start a new life without her. Jamboon wanted to search for a cure, but the Americans were still using the Teklee Genesis for the Vietnam War and Jamboon found thousands of bodies in the forest. This is a reference to a real historical event known as the Thammasat tragedy, during which hundreds of students were shot down by soldiers. In this story, the military used the machine to cover up the tragedy by getting rid of the bodies. One of these students was Kong, who was still alive when Jamboon found him and adopted him. In the present, Jamboon explains he stayed in Danhai to protect Kong and the sphere in the forest. As his last wish, he asks Kong to take him to the woods to see Lawan. In the future, Valen and Morden's mother are shocked to wake up inside a theater. When they try to leave, the building starts shaking and they see a giant monster outside the window. Meanwhile, Stella agrees to teach the teens how to use the sphere, but warns them that this will make the force field disappear. They bring a monster inside a cage and practice by sending it to the prehistoric era. This makes the force field go away and the missiles begin exploding in the sky. Soon they bring the cage back, but it's empty. The monster appears nearby and immediately attacks a girl, so the others open fire. However, now the creature can teleport at will and keeps appearing in different spots in the room to attack more people. Everyone starts running away, but they can't go outside because the missiles are releasing toxic gas, which is already affecting the guards. Soon the monster is cornering people against walls and doors to eat them. Stella takes the sphere and the bracelet back and realizes it's malfunctioning because instead of reabsorbing the final ring, the teens completed the sphere with their copy. At that moment the monster appears in front of them, so Ithi pulls at its tail to distract it. Then Stella activates the warping at the same time the rebels shoot, which causes a small explosion that finally kills the beast. Afterward they discover that one of their guards has died of the gas. Stella wants the teens to come with her, but they want to stay and fight. They also reveal that every time they use the machine it caused a causality breakdown, that's why they don't age. The machine made random beings jump through space and time, which explains why many of the monsters are dinosaurs. This also explains why Morden's mom and Valen are in the future, although they've arrived at the moment before the United Foreign Forces launch their attack. The mother has a wound on her leg and can barely move, so Vale looks for medicine to help her. The teenagers tell Stella that the aliens' invention destroyed their own civilization, which happened before the existence of this universe. Then Stella is given a new time ring, which has been improved from the original. It should be able to rearrange the timeline and fix all the ripples caused by time travel. Stella and Morden get ready to leave, but Ithi announces he's staying so the teens can have an adult who guides them. In the meantime, Valen and the lady discover that there's a zombie in the building with them. Valen very carefully closes the door to keep him out of their room. Unfortunately, there's a second zombie in the adjacent office, so once again Valen has to move quietly to close that door too. In the present, Stella and Morden find Kong alone. After they share what happened, they finish building the sphere and agree to reset the timeline. However, when Kong uses the sphere, he takes the group to the day of the Thammasat tragedy, hoping to change the past. The students are going home, but they stop to hug Kong when they see him. At that moment the soldiers appear and open fire, so everyone rushes to hide. As many students begin to fall dead, The sound of the shots and the screaming makes Kong finally remember the moment of his own death. The group keeps running and finds a door covered with the sphere's energy. To their shock, they can see Valen and Morden's mom on the other side. The energy suddenly sweeps the corridor before disappearing and the sight of the future goes away too. At that moment the soldiers finish killing all the students and Stella has to hold back Kong to stop him from interfering. When a soldier is about to shoot him too, Kong uses the sphere to send them back to the beginning of the tragedy. Stella scolds him, explaining each use further distorts the timeline, but Kong ignores her and tells all the students to hide. As the group runs down the corridor, the weird energy appears on the door again. The soldiers open fire and when the bullets cross that door, they're transported to the future. Ithy also hears a radio voice talking about the tragedy, proving the timelines are colliding with each other. Nearby a boy appears laughing, and the group in the past can hear him as well. At that moment the government ships open fire in the future and the bullets travel to the past too, bringing down the soldiers and destroying all the objects in the corridor. Ithy takes a missile launcher and shoots down one of the ships, causing it to appear in the past. The ship hovers for a few seconds before crashing against the black hole, closing it with the resulting explosion. In the end tons of students and soldiers die anyway. Kong finally accepts he can't change the past and gives the bracelet, saying he'll stay there where he's always belonged. He also takes the camera roll from a dead student and asks Stella to share the truth of what happened. Two soldiers appear to keep on fighting, so Kong runs to distract them while Stella and Morden teleport. Meanwhile the zombie grabs Valen and Morden's mother jumps in to save her. As she fights the creature on top of the desk, the noise gets the attention of the other zombie, who also joins the fight. The mother is overwhelmed and the zombies bite her at the same time. At that moment Stella and Morden appear in the building, and Stella discovers a bullet has wounded her. She calls for Valen and the girl runs to her, but when Morden calls for his mom, he discovers she's become a zombie. He cries as he realizes he must leave with Stella, who activates the sphere again to leave with the kids right before the missiles strike the city. In the present the trio appears in the military facility and all the rings come apart. Stella is too weak to move, so she gives the bracelet to the kids to finish the job. Suddenly the door opens and the demoness appears. Morden rushes to grab a metal bar to distract her while Valen uses the machine to call Tom, who tells her what buttons to press. As the machine restarts, the rings come back together to reform the sphere. It starts glowing and so does the demoness, screeching in pain as her body disintegrates. A huge amount of energy appears on top of the facility, slowly fixing the timeline. Stella closes her eyes before a very bright explosion of light takes over the area. When she opens them, she finds herself in front of a tree with her mother's voice, who reminds her that as long as there's love, every little thing does matter. Tom's voice joins in with a different take. Everything in the universe has a beginning and an end, so nothing truly matters. When Stella finally chooses what kind of Genesis she wants, another bright explosion happens and Jamboon's spirit gets to reunite with Lawan's before the reset kicks in. The next time Stella wakes up, she's in her mother's house with Valen, who assures her it wasn't a dream. Then she visits Duangfin at the hospital and apologizes for not saving Tom, but Duangfin says she saw him in a dream last night. Soon she gets better and the whole family lives together in the old house including Morden, who has been adopted. Later when she's alone Stella reveals she still has the sphere and wonders if she could reunite with Ithy. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.